I'm Jaiden Vu and born in Toronto, raised in Vancouver, BC, grew up in a very entrepreneurial kind of family. I am the type of individual that grew up really, I guess, stupid because I was diagnosed with autism. So I wasn't the best when it came to academics. However, my entire family, they're all academically gifted, which became a blessing in disguise. Even though I dealt with depression, suicide, and a bunch of other emotional struggles, it became the reason why I am the person I am today, which led me into sales. And because I developed myself so much, I understand the personal roots of how people behave and how people are emotionally. I did really well at sales, and then I jumped into social media personal branding, where I coach over 150 people right now on that aspect, and it has taken off to the point where I didn't expect to. So currently what I'm doing right now there is real estate investing. That's me in a nutshell. Honestly, I didn't even notice I had autism. I thought it was just me. It was something that I was born with, in a sense where I was completely normal. It didn't really become an effect until they told me that I was autistic. But at the same time, that didn't really stop me, right? I still live life. My parents are very supportive about it, and they try to treat me as normal as possible. I do have my sporadic moments where I throw a tantrum, but me learning was never really hard. It was just about finding something that really stuck to me, right? I had no problem learning, but if it was something that I really wanted to resonate with and I had passion behind it, I will completely learn it. But if it's something I don't, I had a freaking hard time, right? So how I overcame that probably had to be the fact that I dealt with depression, because I never got what I wanted out of life, right? I was always picked on, I was bullied, I was beat up. Like, I went through everything you possibly could as a depressing teenager in the 21st century. I think what made me get into sales and how I got into that route was just declaring to myself that just because I have autism doesn't mean I'm not going to be successful. I mean, I look at people like Keanu Reeves, right? He was diagnosed with Down syndrome, but he was still able to overcome it. Then you have people out there that, another great example, Elon Musk learned really slow, and how he learned how to build rocket ships literally is picking up a book. So for me, it was never about how fast I can learn. It was about how badly I wanted to go somewhere. And overcoming depression and all that, which was a blessing in the sky, made me understand myself. I got into sales because I knew that was my true talents, because I can relate to another. It was never about selling for me. It was about, tell me what your needs are. Can I genuinely, sincerely actually help you? And more so gaining a friend than gaining a sale. And I love the idea of just trying to help people, because you can't help people if they don't really need what you're selling. But at the same time, if you can close them on what it is you're selling, then you've changed their life. And that was my blessing. And that's why I got into sales. Honestly, I still love sales. My day-to-day consists of most sales job, to be honest. Well, some here are a little different here and there, right? But literally, I wake up early. I'm doing my audio books of how to properly sell. I go in there. I meet my team. I train over 25 agents. And basically, we spend an hour every single day doing, our mastermind. I go over what their quotas are, there any objections that they've dealt with, how to overcome them, and literally just mastermind for an hour. So I do that Monday to Friday. And then it's just me going out there and making sure they hit the quotas. I ride with my guys and make sure they probably know how to set up an actual sale. And then from there, I go home and I learn a little bit more. Either I'm watching Grant Cardone, I'm reading a book, either I'm listening to Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, something. I'm always educating myself, right? That was my day-to-day, literally. Just work, educate, work, educate, work, educate. And that was for about 16 hours a day, right? And I did that for 5 years. When I transitioned over to social media, completely different. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. What it was not because I wasn't doing anything, but I actually spent less hours making the same amount of money. And I didn't know how to cope with that, because I'm so used to doing 16 hours, right? So when I transitioned to social media, literally it was just me sitting there, contacting people, still selling, getting them to say yes. But I made more than enough sales with how I priced out my social media. So I have like 6 hours left. I'm just like, what am I gonna do? Right? So I've never educated myself so much because of getting into the transition of social media. But I think the biggest thing that stood out and why I left the sales and got into it was because I wanted to work less and make more, instead of just pounding my ass all day, excuse my French, every single day, and just work really hard, because I want balance. I want to see my family. I want to be able to go travel. I want to be able to do whatever I want instead of always asking for a day off or requesting a week off or anything like that. And just because I was in sales, I was making good money, but what's the point of money if you can't spend it on anything? I mean, you're only gonna live once. It's better to, die rich, or it's better to live rich than die rich. Let me think back. There's so many. I've dropped tens and thousands of dollars on mentors and training programs, but I think the first person, and we're talking about someone I physically trained with, that became my first was nobody. So he was in the sales, and I don't mean it in an offensive way, right? But no one really knows him, and that's what I like best. At the same time, one of the biggest mentors, Grant Cardone, is all about personal branding. But he was really good, but no one knew he was really good, and I was the only one that caught it because I'm very detailed in understanding people. And this guy was so good, and he wasn't a manager or anything like that. He wasn't even a mentor, right? And he was just literally a sales associate. But if you watch the guy so closely, like the way I did, I noticed this guy worked so hard. He understands the material. He was always the #1 agent. And I'm like, what is this guy doing right? And why is he being promoted? So I decided to have a conversation with him, and he turns out to be another 10Xer. And he's invested a lot of training programs, and he's trained with a bunch of people that I don't know, but they're very big in Canada. And when I was talking for that hour, I was sold on who he was, and I went straight up to him. I was like, I want to pay you to be my mentor. And he's like, I've never mentored anyone. I was like, great, let me be your first. And he taught me everything I knew. And the one question I asked him is, if you're so good, why are you still here and why aren't you promoted? He's like, because I wanted balance in life. If I got into management, they will suck me dry, and I'm happy making what I'm making. And he told me money is only as important as who you share it with. So not only did he teach me how to be better at sales, but he taught me how to be better with money and life. And that was my first person that I've trained with. His name was Tony. First one that comes to mind is Grant Cardone. And if any of you watching out there do not know who Grant Cardone, I don't know if you can catch this, but he's a real estate investor, sales master from Miami, Florida. And I've actually been blessed to be able to train with him a couple of months back in November. But this guy's amazing, right? So he inspires me because he's got a great relationship, 2 lovely daughters, and he's still making loads of money. And he's around retirement age soon, and he's still crushing it like he's 30. So that's one. 2 is hands down Warren Buffett. This guy's everything about investing in life principles, and I grew up reading a lot of Warren Buffett, so he would be my second. And the third one, I was trying to figure out who I bounced back and forth with, but I have been listening to a lot of Dan Lok stuff, because Dan Lok is it's like a mini version or Asian version of another favorite of mine, Dan Pena. But his no fluff sales kind of route, I love it, because sometimes people do throw in a lot of fluff and it's just not necessary. He's a funny guy too. So yeah, Grant Cardone, Warren Buffett, and Dan Lok. So my journey started off with me knowing nothing, right? So it was like most people, commit now, figure out the rest later. I just knew that I loved going on Instagram. My following was growing and my engagements were getting better. And I started really learning more intensively about it. And I figured I had a knack for this. So most of my education has been through Google, like most people, to be honest, picking up books. And I'm a huge avid reader of books. I read like 70 a year. I got into it because I was really good at understanding how to brand people and understanding how to raise engagements. And the biggest thing that I learned that I didn't know even until now was that the key to anything, even with social media, is consistency. You got to be consistent with what you're doing. And I didn't understand that, to be honest, because I thought I would just post great photos sporadically, do your hashtags and all that. But it's all about consistency. That's the biggest thing that I learned out of it. And sometimes it's hard to be consistent with life, right? Because life is always a curveball. They're always going to throw you something. So when I applied the consistency to Instagram, that changed my life. When I was coaching, one of my mentees taught me something I didn't know, and it completely blew my mind, was that I thought that IGTV was going to become the biggest thing, and I spent a lot of time and money investing into creating content for IGTV, and he told me specifically on the day it got released, do not get into it because it's going to die. Fast forward 2 months later, completely dead. No one cares about it. So I hope that answered your question, but there was one other incident where I was branding one of my mentees, musician, And he grew way faster than I expected him to. And I asked him, how did you grow so fast? And one thing I didn't know was he took the time to reach out to all 3,000 followers and say thank you to them personally. And he went from 3,000 to 7,000 in less than 2 months, because he just took the time to thank people for following him, and he built a rapport. And I don't do that, right? And I'm just like, wow, that's like the next level. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have the time for it, but I just never looked at it that way, to really thank people for following. And I guess because of word of mouth, he got all those followers. So that's one thing I learned, and I get my guys to apply it, even though it's not really personal. But yeah, that's one thing I learned. In the next 10 years, buying tons of Lamborghinis.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here.
Owning a lot of real estate, expensive one. But I think the biggest thing for me about real estate, and it's for me growing up, it's not about the money, right? It's never been about the money. It's about what I can do it for, what I can do with it. So with the real estate 10 years out from now, not only do I want to do all the fancy things that I only dream of, but to use the most of the capital I make from it still ongoing, like making tons of money with it, is to do things that are going to contribute back to the world. So I've always had dreams of donating money to the Cancer Research Foundation, helping building a school for people that can't afford education, and helping purify water for all over the world, and also really just donating to local food banks and Make-A-Wish Foundation. So to help people do the things that they can't do, but we were able to do. Not so much feeling sorry for them, but giving them an opportunity that no one would ever give them. So where the real estate's gonna go, everything that I've ever done in my life, including real estate or sales, was to get enough capital to just help people in the world. So the real estate is just another flow of income for me to make that a realization. My favorite animal, I would say a chameleon. My favorite animal is a chameleon because it can blend in and it can adapt. And it will never be striked unless it makes a mistake, but that's why they're so focused. And if I'm able to have the skill to constantly never be striked, to be able to adapt, to be able to blend in, to camouflage, and also have the focus they do, then I'm always going to win. Because at the same time, right, it's not about what you want, it's about what your client wants. If you can adapt and blend into what their wants are, you're always going to get everything out of life. And it's one of my favorite quotes, Zig Ziglar: you can get everything you want out of life if you can help enough other people get what they want. So as this video is about to end, and I'm thankful for everyone that is watching it, and if you can do myself and Evan a favor, just like and share to people that you think is going to bring value. But I want to be able to kind of touch on two things. So this is going to be for either entrepreneurs, business owners, or people that want to start something but they have no clue where to start. Two of the biggest lessons I learned at building businesses, failing a bunch of times, even succeeding here once in a while, still failing, are number one, which is very key, is stop being so perfect, right? Perfection is paralysis. If you spend so much time perfecting something and trying to be the best, you're gonna leave tons of opportunities out there. It's not about perfection, it's about production. And you can only find perfection through quantity. If you do it over and over and over, you will fine tune it and make it perfect. But if you try to make everything perfect off the bat, you're gonna leave so much on the table, because time changes fast, market goes fast, and you're just gonna sit there and hopefully everything will just fall into place, but it doesn't, right? So don't focus on perfection, focus on production, because at the end of the day, even though it's perfect and in your eyes you think it's perfect, the market will dictate if it's perfect or not you. You're not the market, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good it is. If you can't make a sale, you can't make a sale. So do not focus on perfection. It is paralysis. And then the last thing that I learned growing up is being consistent. And being consistent you want to apply in life and business as well, more so life, because really if you are consistent with your daily routines and yourself as a human being, it will translate over to business, because what you do at one thing is what you do at everything. So be consistent with what it is you do. If you're going to train people to the best of your ability and consistent with it. If you're going to set aside time specifically for a certain aspect, stick to it. If you're going to invest money and you have people that are going to help you make a decision, don't be inconsistent by going over them and not making a decision together. So everything you do that's helped you get to the position where you are, be consistent with it. And then once you're understanding of your consistency and you understand the process, then you can be a little bit more innovative. Because why do you think McDonald's does well? It's not because they're innovative all the time. It's because they're consistent, and when they understand the process, then they leave enough room for innovation, because if they fail, they have the consistency to back it up. So be consistent by building an actual company culture and honestly a process that works for you. So don't be like most entrepreneurs. Don't be like most businesses. 80% of business closed down. That's because, one, they don't understand they need to sell and be productive, not to be perfect. And last thing is be consistent, because one day you probably feel like crap, but it takes all the difference to just be consistent with your routine, regardless if you had a divorce or your girlfriend left you or anything. It's about understanding your morals and an obligation you have and a responsibility you have as a business owner or as an employee to do your best every day.